Hello. In this training video, we are going to go over what drug plans cover, what Part D covers. So let's begin. Each Medicare drug plan must give at least a standard level of coverage set by Medicare. Plans can vary the list of prescription drugs they cover, called a formulary, and how they place drugs into different tiers on their formularies. So I'm going to get into more detail on this, what they just stated. So, formulary, list of covered prescription drugs. Most Medicare drug plans have their own list of covered drugs, called a formulary. Plans cover both generic and brand name prescription drugs. The formulary includes at least 2 drugs in the most commonly prescribed categories and classes. This helps make sure that people with different medical conditions can get the prescription drugs they need. All Medicare drug plans generally cover at least 2 drugs per drug category, but plans can choose which specific drugs they cover. The formulary might not include a specific drug you use. However, in most cases, a similar drug should be available. If you or your prescriber, your doctor or other healthcare provider who's legally allowed to write prescriptions, believes none of the drugs on your plan's formulary will work for your condition, you can ask for an exception. An exception simply is a type of Medicare prescription drug coverage determination. A formulary exception is a drug's plan's decision to cover a drug that's not on its drug list or to waive a coverage rule. A tiering exception is a drug plan's decision to charge a lower amount for a drug that's on its non-preferred drug tier. You or your prescriber must request an exception, and your doctor and or other prescriber must provide a supporting statement explaining the medical reason for the exception. Continuing on, a Medicare drug plan can make some changes to its drug list during the year if it follows guidelines set by Medicare. Your plan may change its drug list during the year because drug therapies change, new drugs are released, or new medical information becomes available. Plans may immediately remove drugs from their formularies after the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, considers them unsafe, or if their manufacturer removes them from the market. If you're currently taking these drugs, you'll get information about specific changes made afterwards. For other changes involving a drug you're currently taking that will affect you during the year, your plan must do one of these. They must give you written notice of at least 60 days before the date of change becomes effective. At the time you request a refill, provide written notice of the change and a 60-day supply of the drug for 2019 and beyond, at least a month supply under the same plan rules as before the change. Going on. You may need to change a drug you used or pay more for it. You can also ask for an exception. Generally, using drugs on your plan's formulary will save you money. If you use a drug that isn't on your plan's drug list, you'll have to pay full price instead of a co-payment or co-insurance, unless you qualify for a formulary exception. All Medicare drug plans have negotiated to get lower prices for the drugs on their drug list, so using those drugs will generally save you more money. Also, using generic drugs instead of brand name drugs may save you money. Going on to generic drugs. The FDA says generic drugs are copies of the brand name drugs and are the same as those brand name drugs in dosage form, safety, strength, route of administration, quality, performance characteristics, intended use. Generic drugs use the same active ingredients as brand name prescription drugs. Generic drug makers must prove to the FDA that their product works the same as the brand name prescription drug. In some cases, there may not be a generic drug the same as a brand name drug you take, but there may be another generic drug that will work as well for you. Talk to your doctor or other prescriber. Tiers. To lower costs, many plans place drugs into different tiers. All that is groups of drugs that have a different cost for each group. Generally, a drug in a lower tier will cost you less than a drug in a higher tier. So let me go back. To lower costs, many plans place drugs into different tiers on their formularies. Each plan can divide its tiers in different ways. Each tier costs a different amount. Generally, a drug in a lower tier will cost you less than a drug in a higher tier. Here's an example of a plan's tiers. Your plan's tiers may be different. Tier 1, lowest copayment. Most generic prescription drugs. Tier 2, medium copayment. This may be a preferred brand name prescription drug. Tier 3, higher copayment. This is a non-preferred brand name prescription drug. And Tier 4, specialty tier, is the highest copayment, very high cost prescription drugs. In some cases, if your drug is in a higher, more expensive tier, and your prescriber thinks you need that drug instead of a similar drug in a lower tier, you can file an exception and ask your plan for a lower copayment. We already read what an exception is, but there it is again in the blue box. Just one last reminder: a copay is the amount you pay, an amount you may be required to pay as you share. Let me say that again. An amount you may be required to pay as your share of the cost for its medical service or supply, like a doctor's visit, hospital outpatient visit, prescription drug. A copayment is usually a set amount rather than a percentage. For example, you might pay a $10 or $20 copay for a doctor's visit or prescription drug. Thank you again. Thank you again for your time, and I appreciate your attention on what drug plans cover. Thank you.